Welcome back to Control Alt Delete, Rebooting Your Life. This is session 5, and with me is Redeemer member Barry Alcorn to talk about youth. Now, Barry, we looked at the scripture from Ecclesiastes, which is at first read kind of a dark book, very law-oriented, more than gospel it seems. And yet really his point seems to be there's a lot of things that we put as great importance in our lives, and yet at the end of the day only eternal things are what are important. So as we look at youth, as we look at our own time as youth and the regrets that we may have, as we look at maybe as parents that have youth that are now transferring into adulthood, what's a good attitude to have when we think about the regrets we have from the past?
I think it's first important to talk a little bit about youth, and again, you said the word perspective or attitude, and so I see that as perspective. It's important to know, I mean, when we're young, our faith is simple, and we grow it into our own eventually, and sometimes that process is very long and hard. I mean, it took my dad until 86.
Wow.
So there's hope for all of us in that process. I had a pretty misspent youth. So I read this Ecclesiastes, remember your creators in the days of your youth before the days of trouble come. We expect trouble, right? There's trouble that's going to happen in our lives, and because we're broken and sinful, a lot of times it's us. Sometimes it's the situation. It doesn't matter. I grew up in a single-parent family. My dad left when I was 5. My mom kicked him out. It was his 12th marriage. You might guess that maybe he didn't do a good job in those situations, and frankly, he wasn't a very nice guy. So he was out of the picture until I was in my 20s, and we moved a lot. My mom worked and managed resorts, and so you can imagine the environment I grew up wasn't real conducive to staying on the narrow path, nor was my personality, which is draw a line and show me where the line is and I'll hop over right there. So you put all that together, and I kind of met the depths of my own depravity as a youth. And so as an adult now, how do I deal with that? Right?
Yeah.
How do I handle that? And the attitude that I have? And I think it first comes with perspective. We live in a broken world. We are broken. And God gives us many great gifts. But part of being in this broken world with the gifts and passions that God gives us is this sin nature that we have. Mm-hmm. And so perspective says, I am living in a broken world. I am not perfect. And then God uses actually my imperfections to grow me. Mm-hmm. And I tell my kids, you got to put on your eternity glasses. And so those mistakes and those regrets really are God shaping me and my character for all eternity.
Wow.
I mean, at the end of the day,
yeah,
that's really what's happening. And so I don't really live in regret. I mean, have I made a lot of mistakes? Yes. Am I forgiven through Jesus and his blood? Absolutely. Has God gotten into my sin nature and transformed it into one that is hopeful and passionate and looking for him? Yes. And so I live in that. Do I still make mistakes today? Absolutely. And do I, have regrets? Sure, of course. But do I live in them? Absolutely not. I'm forgiven.
Yeah. You talk about that eternal perspective. How can we help others who are in the moment of regretful situations?
So again, I think back to my youth, and I met my wife in my youth. We've been married 31 years, and it took me a long time to realize she was truly a gift from God. And she demonstrated really unconditional love. Mm-hmm. I mean, I didn't learn initially of God's love reading Scripture. I was pretty far from God. I mean, I attended church and I had all that background in my youth, but I didn't learn unconditional. I learned it from her.
Wow.
And God demonstrated that through her. And I think that's the way we approach people when they are struggling, when they're in that broken sinner state.
Yeah.
It really is, because regret is this dealing with that brokenness and that sinfulness. And it's to love, it's to offer forgiveness, it's to listen. I think that's all you can do. It's to be there.
So show the grace of Jesus when people are in that moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very cool. And speaking of that, as you read the scriptures, what do you feel is the attitude of Jesus toward our regrets?
Well, I read that we are washed clean through Jesus' blood.
Amen.
That He has done it all. I don't think He sees. His attitude. He loves us. He's forgiven us. It's done.
Yeah.
So I can't even relate to Jesus looking at my regrets because He can't see them. He's done all the work.
Amen.
They're gone.
Very cool. Anything else you'd like to share?
No, thank you for inviting me to do this.
All right, thanks, Barry. Enjoy your discussion.